HPD's immigration enforcement policy as the city of Houston faces pressure from state officials. I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman.
And I'm guest host Doug Miller. Southeast Texans are sneezing their way through a bad allergy season. We'll talk with Dr. David Corry, an allergist from Baylor College of Medicine, who'll tell us why, and he'll take your questions. Plus, we'll also learn about a special Earth Day screening of the classic 1982 documentary Koyaanisqatsi. It's happening tonight at Artechouse, Houston.
And as always, we want to hear from you, so give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Libby Casey. President Trump has extended the ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran indefinitely until negotiations conclude. NPR's Franco Ordonez reports Trump backed away just hours after issuing aggressive threats of new strikes.
The president said he extended the ceasefire at the request of the Pakistanis, who are mediating the talks. The Iranians so far have dismissed the extension, saying it means nothing. Now, Trump has mentioned so many different objectives for this war: regime change, helping protesters, preventing Iran from getting a nuclear bomb. But the current priority is about control of the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has maintained a steel grip on over the last several weeks. The Trump administration has tried everything to reopen the strait, including aggressive threats, to now launching its own blockade of Iranian ports, preventing ships from entering or leaving. Franco Ordonez, NPR News, the White House.
Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is testifying before two Senate committees today. The hearings are about the health department's budget. But as NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin reports, Kennedy's moves on vaccines are a key topic.
The tie-breaking vote for Secretary Kennedy's confirmation last year was cast by Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, the chair of the Senate Help Committee, which oversees HHS, and a member of the Finance Committee. Cassidy is a physician who supports vaccines. He only agreed to support the nomination after Kennedy promised not to change vaccine policy and to appear regularly before the Help Committee. The opposite has happened. Kennedy has made dramatic, unprecedented changes to vaccine policy and hasn't testified before the Help Committee since September. Since then, Cassidy has issued statements critical of the Secretary's moves on vaccines, but now he has the opportunity to question him publicly. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News, Washington.
Voters in Virginia have approved a redistricting plan that could boost Democrats' chances of winning 4 additional House seats in November's midterm elections. The constitutional amendment narrowly passed at the polls yesterday. It allows lawmakers to draw a new congressional map. NPR's Ashley Lopez.
The new proposed map could position Democrats to win 10 out of the state's 11 congressional seats. Right now, the maps are drawn to favor Democrats in about 6 of the 11 seats. So a 4-seat boost could play a pretty big role in Democrats' efforts to retake the U.S. House this fall, because Republicans currently only have an edge that's about a couple seats.
The Virginia Supreme Court has yet to rule on challenges to this redistricting effort, which could stop any new districts from being used in this year's elections. Virginia's move comes after potential gains that Republicans made in redistricting efforts in states including North Carolina and Missouri. This is NPR News.
From News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. You'll want to keep your umbrella at arm's length today, especially if you're in the north part of the region. Haley Bailey, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, says things are going to be wet.
We have some isolated showers out there right now, expecting the radar to fill in beginning this afternoon as we get some daytime heating going. As far as the flood concern, we are in a marginal risk. That's a level 1 of 4 from WPC for excessive rainfall today.
Haley also says, due to ground saturation in the region, rainfall of 2 to 4 inches could cause flooding in some areas. Be careful when on the roads. Houston Mayor John Whitmire wants to walk back an ordinance intended to cut back on coordination between the police department and the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The effort comes after Governor Greg Abbott threatened to revoke more than $110 million in public safety grants. News 88.7's Dominic Anthony Walsh reports.
Under the original ordinance passed 2 weeks ago, police officers were supposed to stop detaining people or prolonging traffic stops due to civil immigration warrants. Despite the measure, internal department policy never changed. According to a document obtained by Houston Public Media, officers were still holding people for up to 30 minutes waiting for ICE to respond. Whitmire's revised ordinance would give the department discretion on how long to wait for ICE, essentially undoing the initial measure. After coordinating with Abbott's office, Whitmire's administration released the proposal yesterday, less than 24 hours before the City Council votes on the matter. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, News 88.7.
And checking your weather, chance of thunderstorms as a front moves through, otherwise partly sunny in other areas. We'll see a high today of 80 degrees. Tonight, a low of 69 with thunderstorms and rain possible. Right now, mostly cloudy, 75 degrees on the UH campus. Get more news and information. Go to houstonpublicmedia.org. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. RWJF is a national philanthropy working toward a future where health is no longer a privilege but a right. Learn more at rwjf.org.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now your hosts for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous and Celeste Díaz Schurman.
Hello, Houston. Thanks for joining us. Today is Monday, April 22nd, which also happens to be...
It's Wednesday.
Earth Day. Oh, right, today. Well, you know what? I was out on Monday.
Oh, that explains things.
And
okay.
Tuesday.
So your whole body clock is thrown off, right?
So my whole body clock.
Yeah.
It is Wednesday, Houston. Clearly, I didn't get the memo. But I saw Jim, our EP, look at me like, Celeste? Yes. Yeah. Well, let's start that again. Today is Wednesday, April 22nd, Earth Day. You guys got me. And we want to thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston. Ernie is out, but Doug's here with me.
Good to be back with you, Celeste, especially on Earth Day. We're going to be talking about a lot of things involving Earth Day and in the environment today.
Yes. And so we're going to have a great show. You know, the other thing that we're going to be discussing in a few minutes is, you know, the heated debate continues right now. Our Houston City Council members are currently debating an amendment to a policy that was pushed forward about 2 weeks ago regarding HPD's cooperation with ICE. And so we're going to be hopefully joined by Dominic Anthony Walsh, the Houston Public Media reporter, who's there at City Hall.
Also coming up, Southeast Texans are having a rough time this particular allergy season. I don't know if it's just me, but boy, oh boy, there seems to be a lot of pollen out there. Baylor College of Medicine allergist Dr. David Corry is going to tell us why this is happening to us, and he's also going to be available to take your questions. So if you want to sniffle in, you can contact us at hellohouston.org. You can call us, whatever, to phone us with your questions. But first of all, the headlines. Celeste, take it away.
Yes. As I mentioned, a heated debate at Houston City Hall this morning continues as Mayor John Whitmire pushes to amend, not repeal, a controversial immigration policy with more than $114 million in state public safety funding on the line. The proposal comes just weeks after the Houston City Council voted to change how police interact with federal immigration authorities during traffic stops with the mayor's support. And so, you know, we'd love you to join the conversation at 713-440-8870 on this policy and what you all think regarding state officials stepping in and potentially holding public funding from the city.
It has been so interesting to listen to the debate going on down at City Hall today. It's been heated, and it's so interesting to me that how things have changed simply because of Prop A, the measure that allows city council members to introduce topics onto the agenda. Now, Houston has a strong mayor form of government. Used to be only the mayor could put items on the agenda. And by and large, the city council was a Xerox machine. What the mayor wanted, the mayor got. Well, right now, the mayor would like for all of this to go away, and he did not want this entire subject to come up, because obviously that triggered the action by the governor to threaten to take away $110 million in public safety funds. This is the kind of thing we're going to see more and more of as council members decide to use Proposition A to introduce controversial topics onto the city council agenda.
Yeah, and as we were watching it this morning, yes, one of the key takeaways that I found, Doug, was that we're seeing much more. We're living in very high tensions right now in regards to partisanship. And something that I thought was very interesting was how our council members really were putting that aspect out there and saying, I really wasn't going to vote for this or move this forward. But oftentimes, we feel like we don't want to cause an uproar or a major discussion. We want to keep things kind of status quo. And I think that's one of the key takeaways that I'm seeing. The other thing that I thought was one of the important key factors here is that there seems a lot of analysis of verbiage. And during this session, I heard a lot more discussion between the council members, really talking the fine verbiage and looking at this amendment to say, okay, we're going to change these words, but really is it actually going to have any change on the actual policy? So I think that there was a lot of going back and forth.
That's what you get when you get a lot of lawyers on your city council,
yes.
Actually. One other point that I think needs to be brought up here, there is going to be a lot more of a contentious debate going on now because of something we've been living with for the past couple of decades in Houston. Things changed dramatically when term limits were imposed on city council members. The mayor at that time, Bob Lanier, said he noticed that the council members became a lot more cantankerous, as he put it. And the reason is that if there are term limits for an office and you're a politician, you've got a certain limited window of time to make a name for yourself, okay?
Yep.
And in fact, Mayor Whitmire alleged that that's part of the motivation behind all of this, that you've got a couple of council members who are running for other offices. Therefore, you've got they're trying to stir things up to create headlines, to create something to put on the Twitter feed.
For sure. And I also, I would say not necessarily trying to stir up headlines, but, we spoke to council member Alejandra Salinas, who was really much part of authoring this policy and moving this forward. And she's very new, very fresh on the council. And it was interesting to hear her rebuttal and basically say, which I thought was very interesting and almost smart. She said something on the lines of, this battle isn't within the Houston City Council, but city council members working against the state. And I don't know if she actually used that word against, but I'm paraphrasing here. And I'm curious if, based from our reporters who are in City Hall right now, if they would feel like that was accurate. Because she kept going back and forth. This is not amongst city council members. This is city council members trying to keep, Houstonians safe. And this is between the state and the city. And I'm not so sure some other council members would say that they would agree with that.
Well, there's certainly an argument going on there.
without
Right.
a doubt. I'm also very interested. We heard council member Sally Alcorn, who is currently the chair of the Budget and the Fiscal Affairs Committee. And she basically stated, and I thought she was on point, she said that she hated to see that this has become a choice between money and people. And at the end of the day, though, she said that she felt that through this amendment, the one that we are waiting to hear the vote on, she felt like they could find some type of compromise. So I also think that there are some real outliers that we're seeing on council that really are trying to stay fiscally conservative and be responsible to the budget and understanding where we're at as a city within understanding we are in dire situation when it comes to our budget. And also remaining faithful to public and the safety of Houstonians. So it's going to be very interesting. We're going to continue to follow this. And the second that we have any word on the vote, we will let you know. But we'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the amendment and the amended ordinance? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
And in case you haven't heard, Tesla is rolling out its robotaxis in Houston and in Dallas. CEO Elon Musk announced the expansion on his social media platform X, which real people still call Twitter. Promotional videos show Tesla's SUVs rolling around with nobody behind the wheel, but a lot of the details are still under wraps. We don't know how many robotaxis will hit the streets of Houston, and we don't know how much it'll cost to hitch a robot ride at this point. Tesla's driverless taxis are already operating in the San Francisco Bay Area, and driverless Waymos are already carrying passengers around parts of Houston. Musk is pushing for rapid deployment of robotaxis across the nation, but his plans are running into a traffic jam of skepticism. Tesla's pilot fleet in Austin was involved in 14 collisions during its initial phase, and Fortune magazine reported earlier this year that self-driving vehicles in that city were 4 times more likely to crash than cars driven by humans. So I'd really be interested in hearing from people who've taken rides in robotaxis, or actually Waymos. We've got Waymos rolling around the city now. Have you ridden in a Waymo yet?
I have not, but I remember when they first launched the Waymos right here in our city. Our Houston Public Media reporter, Michael Atkinson, actually rode in one and thought that it was a cool experience. Mm-hmm. I do know that I believe they're from this company called The Verge. They did a poll, a 2026 poll, found over half of Americans wouldn't ride in one. So I think they're pretty 50-50 down the line. Would you ride in one, Doug?
I already have.
Oh, really?
I
Tell me
took
about
a
your
ride
experience.
in a Waymo in Los Angeles a couple of months ago, and I specifically thought, well, let's give this a try. And it's an eerie experience at first. When I first get into the car, there's this soft music playing, like it's a spa experience, and this very sensuous-sounding woman's voice came on, advising me to put on my seatbelt, blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. The first problem I ran into actually came before that because I couldn't figure out how to open the door. There's no traditional door handle on it. I had to open the app and push a button on the app, which makes sense because you don't want somebody else jumping into your Waymo before you get in there. But you get behind the wheel, and it starts rolling along. I was on city streets in Los Angeles, not freeways. So we're talking about going 30, 35 miles an hour. And it's spooky at first, but then you get used to it, and it's not really, I didn't have a problem with it. Strangely enough, though, it dropped me off on the backside of the building I needed to get to. Right. So, and it was a big block, so I had to walk a good quarter mile to get to the entrance of the building. And then when the car came to pick me up afterward, I assumed that it would be going to the same place that the Ubers and Lyft drivers were supposed to go to. Mm-hmm. But no, it was a good 2 blocks away, and I had to walk away looking up and down streets. I finally looked down a street, and there was my little Waymo sitting there just waiting for me with a little, yeah. I went,
I feel like that sounds very much like a AI experience where, it's convenient. It was nice, but it didn't quite get you exactly what you could have gotten with somebody actually driving you.
That's something. I would certainly note that. I took an Uber to Minute Maid Park. I beg your pardon, Dyken Park last week, and I was able to tell the driver, no, don't drop me off here. Pull over a half block away. Drop me off there. It's raining. I want to jump out over here. And you can say that to a driver. A driver can say, here, I'll put you over here so you can grab a Coke before you go. Whatever. A Waymo, you can't reason with the Waymo.
No, and that makes me a little nervous when you can't reason with the person or the vehicle that is is driving you. But we did get a YouTube comment from my British computer guy. It says, Doug, a braver man than I.
Well, my sense of it was this. I know that the robot hasn't been drinking before he picked me up.
That's true. But, there are a lot of restrictions around that. I think that But that's a good point, Doug. I've never actually thought about that.
Yeah. It's Fortune did some sort of a study on it, did an article earlier this year saying that in Austin that Waymos were more likely to be involved in accidents than cars driven by humans. I don't know. I think it's going to become more and more common. And I think, frankly, they're bound to improve. I find it interesting that when we get to the point where we have driverless cars, we can have driverless car services, Uber by robots, basically. And a couple of years ago, Sight Magazine did a story on this very subject, how the entire composition of the Houston area could change when we all get to riding driverless cars and subscribing to driverless services. Basically, supermarkets, other places won't need parking lots. You can call your Uber robot, picks you up, drops you off over there. You do your shopping. It goes off and picks somebody else up. Then you call the Waymo to pick you up, take you back to your house. And if everybody does that, you don't need a parking lot in front of it. And
I don't know if I like that, to be honest with you. I'm kind of a purist, and I want to drive my car and park. Now, I also understand for the environment, this could be a good thing. Would there be less cars on the streets, though?
That has been subject to some debate. I've talked to people on both sides of that. One other interesting aspect of this, though, is these cars supposedly can go 200 miles an hour, right? So once you get a car going 200 miles an hour, that means your commute if you're one of those people who lives up in Kingwood, you can get home in 15, 20 minutes, whatever. Or if you're okay sitting in a car for an hour, as you presently do to commute to Kingwood, you could live in San Antonio and work in Houston and commute back and forth. But all kinds of possibilities.
Interesting. And we have been getting quite a few texts. If you would like to join the conversation, 713-440-8870. We got a text that says, just came back from LA. The Waymo have a bad habit of double parking and then blocking traffic badly. Got delayed in Beverly Hills because of this. And then we also received another text. The last time I took a ride share, the driver admitted to me that he had been awake for over 24 hours. So I definitely think that there are some pros and cons. I do know that in Austin, I saw a news report about a Waymo that had blocked around 6th Street, had blocked a street, and ambulances were not able to get to, unfortunately, what that mass shooting that happened.
Still a few bugs in the system.
There are some glitches, right? I just wouldn't want those glitches to be happening whenever I was in the car, or for anybody at that matter. But again, we want to thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston. We have a great show coming up. We are going to be discussing, coming up on Hello Houston, we're going to talk allergy season with Baylor College of Medicine allergist Dr. David Corry. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're listening right now. Take the next steps and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference, and what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a few minutes to make a big difference. Join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Houston Matters highlights the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. And we do it live on the air weekday mornings at 9 on News 88.7. But we know you're not always available then to listen. So subscribe to our podcast wherever you get yours, or find each day's program to stream online at your leisure at houstonpublicmedia.org. And reach out with questions or comments anytime. Email us at talk@houstonmatters.org.
Support for Houston Public Media.
Meet Dio Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
Includes transit improvements intended to serve Houston after the final match. Metro provides bus, rail, and paratransit service and continues mobility enhancements across the region. More at ridemetro.org/Metro Now. Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Live Nation, presenting David Byrne, Friday, April 24th at Smart Financial Center in Sugar Land. Tickets and more information available at livenation.com. Support comes from UT Health Houston, Houston's health university, where education, research, and patient care come together to help advance health and improve lives in Houston and beyond. More at houstonshealthuniversity.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Celeste Díaz Schurman and guest host Doug Miller.
Spring is in the air, and for many people, so are the sniffles, sneezes, and itchy eyes that come with allergy season. And today we're taking a closer look at what's behind seasonal allergies and how to manage the symptoms. To help us through all the runny noses and congestion headaches, we're joined by Dr. David Corry, the professor of medicine, immunology, allergy, and rheumatology at Baylor College of Medicine. Dr. Corry, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
And if you have a question for Dr. Corry about your allergies, you can give us a call or text at 713-440-8870. You know, Dr. Corry, I have to ask, are spring allergies actually worse this year, or are we just... Are they just getting more intense? Are we noticing them more? Because I'm hearing people say that this year feels a little bit more stronger in their symptoms.
Yeah, it's probably not a whole lot worse than it was last year, but the trend over the last few years has probably been a little bit worse. Mm-hmm. We go through this nice period in the winter when people's allergies, get better typically.
Yeah.
And there's a sweet spot right around December, January where there's literally no pollen and almost no mold in the air to make people miserable. And then we hit spring, right? Now we got all kinds of pollens in the air. Oak is big right now.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody forgets how miserable they were this time last year. And it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like all over again. Here we go. So we're hitting peak pollen and people are definitely miserable. Year to year is probably not a whole lot different, but yeah, it's definitely bad always this time of year.
Why does it seem, or is it just my perception, that allergy problems are worse in Houston than other places I travel to?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So any place within, I'd say, 100 miles of the Gulf of what are we going to call it? Mexico, America. We'll talk about it.
The Gulf.
The Gulf. Yeah, there we go. It's that humidity band means it's going to be a lot more allergy. The humidity and the heat combine to make all kinds of weeds, trees, grasses pollinate. So we have this incredible mixture of pollens in the air. There's another very important factor, though, and it's mold. So with all the humidity, the hurricanes, intense thunderstorms, just a lot of moisture, that mold is going to grow like crazy and really contributes to the whole allergy situation.
So mold, but what else is it floating around in the air in Houston that makes our allergies flare up?
Yes, great question. So we just talked about two things, right? So pollen and molds,
right?
But then there's pollution, right? So there's a couple things. The immediate irritants to the airways that can trigger symptoms are the usual pollutants like PM 2.5, but then there's volatile organic compounds and nitrogen dioxides. And then we're not quite in that season yet, but give it a few more months. We're now it's very hot. There's a lot of UV radiation, and the combination of these VOCs and nitrogen dioxides and ultraviolet light and heat, and the winds have died down by then, leads to a lot of ozone being produced. So ozone is a key pollutant that is somewhat unique to urban environments, particularly a big one like Houston. And we have no shortage of tailpipe emissions and stuff coming out of the refineries that contribute to those VOCs. That it's a complex atmospheric chemistry, but leads to the generation of that ozone. This can be very irritating and trigger those symptoms.
When we talk about symptoms and triggering, what actually is happening in our bodies whenever, for example, you get that headache and you start to feel those symptoms? Talk to us about that.
Sure. So what's really happening when it comes to allergies is there's an infection fighting cell that lives on our surfaces, right? In the skin, the nasal passages. It's called a mast cell, and so for folks that are already sensitized to things like pollens and molds, you encounter that. And you'll make these cells release many things, but the thing that everyone probably knows about is histamine, right? Mm-hmm. So we take antihistamines, right, to relieve those symptoms because it's this specific cell, the mast cell, that's releasing that chemical. After contacting the things that we're already allergic to, but things like ozone and PM 2.5, other pollutants, they can non-specifically also activate the same cells and trigger the same kind of symptoms. So those are kind of the main mechanisms.
So different strokes for different folks, I guess, but what's the best kind of preventative drug I can take, over-the-counter or prescription?
Sure. So especially if you know what you're allergic to, recommend getting in contact with an allergist or somebody that can do that testing for you. If you know what you're allergic to, then you can follow the pollen reports, and you'll know when your pollen or pollens are starting to come up, and then you can start taking action prophylactically. And the beginning of that is to really take a good quality antihistamine. There are different kinds of antihistamines. The first generation tend to make you very drowsy, like Benadryl. Most people have heard of. Mm-hmm. But then second generation stuff like fexofenadine, loratadine, others that are available over the counter, they are much better. Most people are, not everybody, most people are not going to have a problem with drowsiness, but they're just as effective in blocking those allergy symptoms. So blocking that key chemical that we make, that histamine, right? There's also nasal sprays, and there's nasal antihistamines and nasal glucocorticoid, steroid sprays that can be very helpful as well. So yeah.
Dr. Corry, I know, Doug just asked about prescriptions and things. Mm-hmm. I've heard, and a lot of people say, eating local honey. Is that a myth? Eating local honey can help with allergies.
Sure. So the word that comes from, of course, is bees collect that nectar from flowers, but also pick up the pollen. The pollen provides the protein that the bees need to grow, right? And of course, the nectar is for the fuel. So the idea is that pollen gets incorporated into that honey. To some extent, that is true, and there is something to be said about low dose exposure to the things that you're allergic to can lead to desensitization. That is the principle by which immunotherapy works, by the way. And now we're getting increasingly into sublingual, that is, or oral desensitization against things like grasses and dust mites. But the level of which those allergens are present in honey and the frequency with which most people will eat that honey is not going to be enough to do you any good, actually. So there really is probably no real. It's just it's not.
Sounds like a great story.
It's a great story.
I was going to say you always hear local honey, and
correct.
It's like
So
correct.
If I suddenly I discover I'm sneezing, my nose is running, and so on. Then I start popping Claritin that day. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way, right? You have to sort of build up. Do you have to take it a couple of days in advance for the season?
It actually will work right away.
Oh, really?
For most people, yeah. You don't have to build up a certain level, or there's no accommodation that the body really needs to make for these things to work. So as soon as you start popping it in, it's going to start working. The problem that folks face is that if they wait until they get hit with a big wave of pollen or whatever, and they really have bad symptoms, it's going to take a large dose, probably larger than what is recommended in terms of these over-the-counter medications. But if you take it in larger than recommended doses, and of course we recommend working with your physician to make sure it's safe to take higher than recommended doses. But that will allow you to catch up quickly.
Do I need to take Claritin, say, year-round, or is it just a season when I should take it?
Increasingly, I think allergists are thinking the way I am, and no, we don't recommend taking it year-round, and there's a good reason for that. So all the antihistamines are now linked to later in life onset of dementia. So it's not really clear why that association is there. It doesn't mean cause and effect, but because we don't know, well then all the more reason, I guess, to be cautious and don't take these absolutely year-round. Again, it's good to know what you're allergic to, know when that season is coming. Some people, of course, are allergic to things that are in the house that you can't get away from so much, so like dust mites and cockroaches. You can do things in the house to control the levels of those things, and we can talk about that if that's of interest.
Yeah.
So the idea is not to take too much antihistamine.
We are speaking.
We're getting some kind of a
emergency
technical
alert.
problem here. Yeah. Okay.
We are back. That was an emergency alert. And we are speaking with Dr. David Corry, professor of medicine, immunology, allergy, and rheumatology at Baylor College of Medicine about allergy season. If you would like to join the conversation, you can call or text 713-440-8870. Now, I am curious, what about people, I mean, full disclosure, I'm asking for a friend, but who don't really love to take medicine? Are there ways to essentially help your symptoms without necessarily taking a Claritin or some other type of prescription?
Sure. So a lot of people don't like taking some kind of medication every day and squirting some up their nose. There
Right.
can be all kinds of side effects. So there's several things you can do is try to just simply limit exposure. So what you can do in the house, so let's get into that. So
Yep.
a lot of people are allergic to things that are inescapable in the house, like dust mites and cat and dog danders and,
Right.
and cockroaches, other things, molds. So keep your house clean, get rid of those carpets. If you have an old mattress, probably time for a new one.
Mm-hmm.
You can cover your pillows and mattresses and other cloth-related objects with covers to limit to cut down on the aerosolization of allergenic things that might be in those furnishings. But you can also get an air filter, a HEPA filter, that is really excellent for controlling the levels of these various pollutants in the air. Highly recommended. Keep the humidity down in the house. Everybody should know what their humidity is. Keep it below, in Houston, it's really hard to keep it below 50% most of the year. Ideally, it's 35%. No, you can't do that in Houston.
Right.
So, again, we talk about that humidity. It's just very hard to control. But try to keep it down below 50%, and most people will do well. The reason for that will help keep the mold from growing in your house. It's the mold that often leads to, not only is it an allergen all by itself, but it can drive allergies to other things like pollens and dust mites and cat and dog dander and that kind of thing. So there's some simple things you can do in the house. Make sure that air conditioning system is inspected every year. Make sure the vents are checked. Make sure there's no mold growing in that system by a qualified person. What you can do outside is wear a mask, and I know that's not popular, but for people that have really trouble with those allergies, wearing a good quality N95 mask can do wonders from keeping down allergy symptoms.
Yep.
That's interesting. You talk about masks. During COVID, did you discover people had fewer allergy problems?
I can't say that we actually noticed that, but we certainly did see a big drop in viral illnesses and low grade rhinovirus, that kind of thing. That can also trigger allergy symptoms quite a bit. So there was definitely an improvement in symptoms overall.
Speaking of viral illnesses. How can you tell? You start sneezing, your nose is running. How can you tell if it's just allergies or maybe something more serious?
Boy, that's a great question. Mm-hmm. So it's very much an imperfect art there, and the tincture of time will typically resolve that. But one of the key things, though, if you're having fever, that's almost certainly not an allergen, with the possible exception of cedar. Cedar, also called juniper, that's mostly growing in West Texas, but when the winds come in the winter, and cedar season, by the way, juniper season is roughly January 15th to February 15th, and those winds will bring that pollen into Houston and make people miserable. If you're getting heavily exposed to that pollen, you can become febrile, but that one example aside, almost nobody is going to actually develop fever when it's just an allergy. So fever is one clear demarcation. That's pretty much going to be an infection. Right. Also, systemic symptoms like aches and pains, that could happen with severe allergies, but it's more likely to be some kind of a viral thing.
And we did get a YouTube question from Alex Garza Photo, who's wondering, is there an age or exposure level where the immune system becomes permanently stuck in an inflammatory state?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there is a I think I know where that question is coming from. There is a lot of chatter on the internet, but in many different circles, about inflammaging is the term that people are using. That as we get older, we tend to develop stronger and higher markers of general inflammation. It's not really clear what is driving that, but that is a real thing. What it means for us and what's causing it, that's all very speculative, hard to know. But if we're talking about allergies, is there, like, to get maybe more specifically to what he's asking, So is it possible if you're continuously exposed to allergens, maybe can that lead to a permanent state of allergy? There's not really good evidence that that's the case. Actually, if you follow people over quite a few years, allergies tend to get better actually over time. And so, but that might take a decade, and nobody wants to do that. So, hence our medications and other interventions.
But I think that offers some real hope for parents out there whose kids might suffer a lot from allergies.
So that's exactly right. I'll use my own example. I grew up in Dallas, and I was absolutely miserable as a kid. I was on like prescription antihistamines. They don't even make any anymore. I think because they're too dangerous, and that's probably why I wound up the way I did. I don't know. But yeah, I know I was completely miserable. But now I'm not allergic to anything. I just recently did my own allergy testing. I'm not allergic to anything, and I do pretty well.
You lucky dog.
But yeah.
We also got an email. This is from Justin, who says, my optometrist expressed concerns about long-term exposure using medicine like Flonase. Are there any concerns from your perspective? Sincerely, Justin.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the intranasal glucocorticoids, or steroids like Flonase, there is a concern with using these medications in people that have glaucoma or are predisposed to glaucoma. Glaucoma is when you get increased pressure inside your eye. It can lead to blindness. It's a very serious disorder, somewhat difficult to manage, and you don't want to be doing anything that's going to make that worse or trigger it if you're right on the edge. And so optometrists are very correct in voicing concern about the use of these agents. So again, as we were talking about earlier with antihistamines, we don't recommend taking these agents routinely.
Right.
The idea is to take them as needed, and for some people, that might be a significant part of the year because the allergy season might, because they might be allergic to 20 different pollens that extend across the entire growing season. It might be 6 months. Then you're justified using glucocorticoids and other agents for that period of time. But that kind of person also you want to consider getting into other more advanced treatments. For example, allergen immunotherapy that is done by allergists typically. And there's actually other ways of managing allergies that are quite rather sophisticated that we didn't have, options that we didn't have even a few years ago that are worth exploring. So you're not just limited to what's available over the counter.
And we also received another YouTube question who says, Mrs. British Computer Guy, so his wife, takes allergy shots all the time. Do they really work?
Yes, so the data on allergy shots and the technical name immunotherapy do very much work. I think immunotherapy is a bit of a mystery for a lot of folks. Let's walk through that. Immunotherapy is really not a whole lot different from getting any vaccination. It is vaccination. We're vaccinating you against what you're allergic to. But it's different from, for example, flu or COVID. You get a one-and-done shot for the year, right? But you can't do that with an allergen. If you were to get a full-strength, allergen shot, you'd be in the hospital or in worse shape. It would probably trigger an anaphylactic response, right, which is life-threatening, obviously. So the way allergists do this is they dilute the injection to very, 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 very way out, and then each time you come in, you double that dose. Everybody practices a little bit differently, but typical protocol is to each time you come in, they double the strength, and it might take up to 6 months. But now you're on the full strength stuff, and typically switch over to once a month injections, something like that. They keep that going for 2 to 5 years, sometimes longer. So what we're doing is gradually building up immunity. That's a type of immunity that's not going to trigger allergic reactions. This is the immunological principle by which allergy shots work.
And, I was asking about honey and people who don't necessarily want to take medication. I think the flip side of that is, when is it time to see your doctor?
Yeah, if the over-the-counter stuff is just, if you're still miserable after taking your Claritin or whatever the second-generation antihistamine is, and your Flonase and your intranasal antihistamine, if those things are not working, you're masking and or remove the carpets, doing everything you can to control allergen levels in the house, and you're still miserable, then you need to see an allergist. You need to figure out what you're allergic to and work with your allergist to figure out what more needs to be done.
And when you say figuring out what you're allergic to, what exactly is that process?
Sure. Sure. There's two ways of doing that. So let's talk about what does being allergic mean, right?
Yeah.
So we mentioned those mast cells, right? This is that cell that releases the histamine that makes you miserable. So let's back up a little bit. What makes it release that histamine? Well, so we all make different flavors of antibodies, right? So we get a shot for flu. We just talked about that. You make an IgG antibody, but when you're allergic, you're making a different class of antibodies called IgE, immunoglobulin E. It's that IgE that binds to mast cells, and when you encounter whatever you're allergic to, and it binds to that IgE bound to the mast cell, that's what triggers the activation and release of histamine. The idea then is to control that IgE production and or block again the effect of whatever you're allergic to triggering that mast cell.
And we did receive a text from Tal who says, and we just kind of asked this, can you ask how can I get tested for allergies and find out exactly what I'm having a reaction to? I really wish I knew what I was allergic to so I could prepare, say, by reading the daily Houston Pollen Report.
And so, so the testing is done, and there's two different ways to do that testing. You're basically looking for that IgE. And so you can do a blood test, and so you just need some blood, and they'll tell you what your IgE is reacting to. And typically the panels can vary depending on who the laboratory is, but 40, 50 different things that are common, that people are commonly allergic to. Or you can do what's called skin prick testing. So basically it's the old-fashioned way of doing this. Keep in mind allergy testing has been around for more than 100 years. So basically you take a small piece of plastic and dip that into whatever the pollen extract is, and just lightly prick that skin on the arm or the back or whatever, and you wait 30 minutes to see a red itchy welt come up. And you measure the size of that and that kind of thing. That's how you know and quantify, what you're allergic to. The skin prick testing is probably a little bit more sensitive than the blood test, but they both give excellent insight.
Well, thank you for your insight today. Dr. David Corry is a professor of medicine, immunology, allergy, and rheumatology at Baylor College of Medicine. Again, Dr. Corry, thanks for joining us today on Hello Houston.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Coming up, a film that captures the beauty of the natural world and the chaos of the modern age. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Meet Damola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Damola to learn more about his ride.
Per month, you'll receive PBS Passport, a member benefit that lets you stream more of the shows you love anytime. It only takes a few minutes to make a big difference. Become a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
The loneliness epidemic makes headlines across the country, but it's worth asking, do we even like spending time with people anymore?
I think people feel uncomfortable in the world today. They decided that their home is their sanctuary, and it's not easy to get them to leave.
Our antisocial century, that's next time on Think.
You can listen to Think tonight at 11 o'clock.
Support comes from the Grand 1894 Opera House, presenting Dinosaur World Live, a stage production featuring interactive elements and life-size dinosaur puppets, including a Triceratops, a T-Rex, and more, May 2nd and 3rd. thegrand.com.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV 8, it's a night of nature and science. At 7, Nature presents the legendary tigers of India, followed at 8 by Nova with a look at the weather events known as rain bombs. Tonight on TV 8.
Support comes from Pearland, a community dedicated to growing innovative businesses and inspiring families, offering a diverse workforce, modern infrastructure, and schools, parks, and more. Details at pearlandedc.com. Pearland, innovation lives here. Support comes from Elmore, communicating with clarity and inspiration, collaborating with executive leadership to create expert internal and external communication strategy. Elmore, listen, clarify, communicate. More at elmorepr.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Celeste Díaz Schurman and guest host Doug Miller.
In 1982, as blockbuster movies like E.T. and Raiders of the Lost Ark broke box office records at the nation's multiplexes, audiences in art house cinemas beheld a documentary unlike anything they had ever seen before, an 86-minute montage of nothing but music and pictures. No dialogue, no narration, just moving images set to a hypnotically repetitive soundtrack composed by Philip Glass. Koyaanisqatsi was the title of that movie. It became a cult hit of the 1980s, one of the decade's highest-grossing documentaries. And this evening, this unusual work of cinema returns to Houston for an Earth Day screening in a unique theater space. It's happening tonight at Artechouse Houston in the Heights. And to tell us more about this screening, we are joined by the Art House Houston co-founder Maureen McNamara and Artechouse Houston Director of Marketing Jonathan Beitler. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So before we talk about Koyaanisqatsi, the movie itself, tell us about Artechouse Houston. What is it unusual about this theater that makes this screening unusual?
Yeah, absolutely. We are a digital art museum located in the Heights. With our hallmark of our space is our immersion gallery.
Mm-hmm.
So, during the week we showcase digital art from artists across the globe and allow guests to really become part of the art when they step inside of our immersion gallery. And we're really excited to transform that into an immersive theater tonight and show Koyaanisqatsi.
And I have to say, the experience as someone who has been there is transformative for a person. You're not just stepping into art, you are becoming one with it. I mean, I have to say, I was so just blown away by the experience whenever I went. So I can't imagine putting the music of Philip Glass and the whole experience to it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're showing the film in a very large format in the space on 3 walls, and we have a 30-channel sound system too. So It's going to be an amazing way to hear Philip Glass's soundtrack tonight.
So Koyaanisqatsi, it's the Hopi word for life out of balance or life in turmoil, crazy life, that sort of thing. The movie transitions between serene scenes of nature and jarring moving images created by man of modern life and so on. There's one segment, I believe at the beginning of the movie, opens with pictographs from the Horseshoe Canyon. And we see images of the desert, and then later in the same segment we see pictures of traffic, pixelated images of modern life. I wonder, how would you describe this movie to someone who's never seen it? Maureen, what do you think?
Well, I like the description that it's an arresting tone poem, that the film is... like calling it a documentary is not exactly right. Mm-hmm. It's definitely not a narrative film, but it is like totally like captivating and engaging and moves the spirit, I would say. Like I saw it multiple times back in the 80s, as I think you did too, Doug. But it was one of the films that really, I think, transformed me. Not just, it wasn't just going to see a movie. So I was really looking for the perfect place to show the film and to really honor it in the way that it had, to help move others in the way that it had moved me. And Artechouse seemed like the perfect marriage. So.
Oh, absolutely. Now, Maureen, I'm curious, when you talk about how it transformed you, what was it that transformed you about the film?
Well, I think that, like any experience of art, it's really it's in the eye and the interior of the beholder. Yeah. I might have had a different experience than Doug had, for instance, seeing it at the River Oaks a long time ago. Mm-hmm. So I think that it because it is a kind of visual poem. Mm-hmm. It gives you the opportunity to internalize it and take from it the story that I believe is intended, but also to expand it through your own process, right?
And then there's the soundtrack by Philip Glass.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Hypnotically repetitive music.
And stunningly beautiful.
And unfortunately, for legal reasons, we can't play a clip of it right now, but it is a very repetitive sort of thing. It's
almost
hypnotic.
Meditative, yeah.
Right, yeah. But this was the first of a trilogy. Am I right about that? There were three movies.
There were other films. The other ones did not. I don't think they had the same resonance. Mm-hmm. I mean, amazing films also, but I think they didn't have this same kind of like impact, like the same, like happens often with
sequels, obviously.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to note that this film came out in 1982, and it was only a year before this film came out that MTV debuted on television, which really radically changed visual production, the video images we saw. Television became better as a result. It became a lot more visually arresting. Mm-hmm. So perhaps the sequels didn't have the same impact for the reason that visual images and our language that we spoke in pictures changed after the
started evolving.
The decade evolved.
Yeah, I think this film still has that punch. And Jonathan said that they're screening it on 3 walls. I wanted to clarify something here, that it's not that it's screening 3 different screenings on 3 walls. It's a beautiful wrap around the 3 walls. So it's fully immersive. The Jonathan and his team at Artechouse have done a beautiful job of setting that up.
How do you do that, Jonathan? Do you have 3 different projectors?
Well, the other thing I was going to also say to that is, we're using the word poem, and oftentimes you read a poem and we see it with our eyes and our imagination, we can hear it. And I'm curious, to Doug's question, how did you envision this to fit into Artechouse?
Yeah, I mean, so for me personally, I've loved this movie since I first saw it in college. Granted, it came out before I was born, but when I remember seeing it in college,
Baby.
and it really had an impact on me because I'd never seen anything like it. Even though it was already 20 years old when I first saw it. So when Maureen and I met last year sometime, one of the first things we talked about was our love for this movie, and I had been wanting to bring it to Artechouse.
That's cool.
You had been wanting to bring it somewhere, and so this was kind of serendipitous that we were able to do it. So when we talk about bringing it into a space like Artechouse, we really want to give people a different experience than if they were in a normal theater, and we do. We encourage people to sit on the floor, sit in bean bags, relax. It's a different sort of space than your normal or traditional theater. We have this incredible sound system, and it's really giving you an opportunity to see the art that we normally show or see a film in an outside of the box setting. And while you're with us, you can also see all of our other galleries as well.
Jonathan Beitler is the Director of Marketing for Artechouse Houston. Maureen McNamara is the co-founder of Artechouse Houston. Thank you all both for joining us today on Hello Houston.
And Koyaanisqatsi will screen tonight at 7:30 at the Artechouse Houston in the Heights.
And coming up, we're going to continue discussing today's top headlines. We'll also hear the newest episode of Texperts about the 40th anniversary of Don't Mess with Texas campaign. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from Depelchin, reminding you that April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and for more than 130 years, Depelchin has worked to ensure that Houston area children are part of safe and loving families. Learn more at depelchin.org.
This afternoon, we have an 80% chance of showers, and thunderstorms will warm up to about 80 degrees. Chance of thunderstorms this evening, too, a low 69 at 76, and this is your NPR station. KUHF Houston News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, a federal appeals court has ruled that the state of Texas can require public schools to display the 10 Commandments. We'll discuss this ruling and more of the top headlines of the day. I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman.
And I'm guest host Doug Miller. We'll also talk with Houston Public Media's senior reporter for politics and government, Andrew Schneider, about a legal battle over hemp products in Texas. It's headed back to court.
Plus, we'll also hear the newest episode of Party Politics, co-host Brandon Rottinghaus's Texperts series, all about the 40th anniversary of the Don't Mess with Texas campaign.
Also, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Libby Casey. President Trump is extending a ceasefire with Iran indefinitely while maintaining the U.S. naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran now says it has seized 2 ships and fired on a third in the strait. NPR's Aya Batrawi has more from Dubai.
The 2 vessels were seized by Iran's Revolutionary Guard in the Strait of Hormuz. That's the key waterway through which a fifth of the world's oil was passing before the war began nearly 2 months ago. Iran, which is blocking most ships now from transiting through the strait, says the seizure of today's vessels is in response to the U.S. seizing an Iranian cargo ship and its crew on Sunday. They called it an eye for an eye, an oil tanker for an oil tanker. The U.S. Navy is positioned in the Arabian Sea, blocking Iranian ships from entering or exiting the strait. Iran said the seizure of the ship violates the ceasefire, and there's no word yet on whether the 2 sides plan to meet again for another round of talks. Aya Batrawi, NPR News, Dubai.
Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. faced questions from senators this morning about vaccines, a measles outbreak in South Carolina, and Medicaid. He's on Capitol Hill for 2 budget hearings today, starting with the Finance Committee, but senators are hitting on a wide range of controversial health policies. Massachusetts Democrat Elizabeth Warren pressed Kennedy on the one-off deals that the Trump administration has signed with individual drug companies, saying the U.S. needs a comprehensive approach.
If these deals with Big Pharma are so great for Americans, then we should be able to see what promises have been made.
You have the power to make this deal yourself. Why don't you do that? Why did you? We did this because you refused to do
I think what we've got is Trump.
You have a lot more power to negotiate than we do.
Stakes.
We got the lowest prices in history.
By healthcare costs, and you and Donald Trump are actually making the problem worse.
This afternoon, Kennedy goes before the Senate Health Committee. The big tech company Meta says it will soon begin tracking its employees' digital movements to train its artificial intelligence. As NPR's Bobby Allen reports, the surveillance has been met with blowback from workers who say that's intrusive.
Meta told employees new logging software will record keystrokes, mouse movements, and even take snapshots of employees' screens. Meta made the announcement to its 78,000 employees in an internal memo that was reviewed by NPR. In response to employees' concerns, Meta leadership wrote in another internal message, quote, "The model will not be able to memorize any of the screen content it sees," adding that all the data will be disconnected from employee names. Meta is ramping up AI across its workforce, just as it plans to lay off about 10% of its its staff next month. The new surveillance will not apply to employees in Europe, where the practice would violate data privacy laws. Bobby Allen, NPR News.
At this hour, stocks are trading up. The Nasdaq saw a surge today, and the Dow and S&P 500 are both higher. NPR.
From News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. The Houston City Council has revised a policy on how police officers interact with federal immigration authorities. The council passed a measure only 2 weeks ago that prohibited officers from detaining people due to civil immigration warrants. The revision from Mayor John Whitmire comes after Governor Greg Abbott threatened to revoke about $114 million in public safety grants unless the measure is repealed. The update changes definitions and language in the ordinance, but according to City Attorney Arturo Michel, even under the revision, officers are still expected to not detain people for civil warrants.
They comply with the Fourth Amendment. A person can be detained for the time needed to conduct the state law criminal investigation. And so in that sense, the original ordinance, that purpose remains the same.
Reportedly, the measure passed by a 14-4 vote. Governor Abbott's office has not commented on the change. Well, rain is on the way, and depending where you are, you could see a great amount of rainfall. Meteorologist Haley Bailey is with the National Weather Service in Houston. She has the latest on the amount of rain we could see.
If any of those storms do have higher rainfall rates, we could see that flood threat increase over the Houston area. Right now, we are messaging generally 2 to 4 inches with isolated higher amounts of 5 to 7 inches through today.
With some areas saturated from the weekend storms, ground absorption may not take place, resulting in low-lying areas filling with water and causing spot flooding across affected areas. Your check of weather, showers likely this afternoon with heavy rainfall in the high of 70. Tonight, showers and thunderstorms possible with a low of 65. Right now, mostly cloudy, 76 degrees on the UH campus. Get more news and information. Go to HoustonPublicMedia.org. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Schwab, offering investors choices from self-directed investing to full-service wealth management all in one place. Committed to helping investors in any life stage with their investing goals. More at schwab.com.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now your hosts for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous and Celeste Díaz Schurman.
Welcome back to the second hour of Hello Houston. Today is Wednesday, April 22nd. It is Earth Day. We want to thank you again for joining us this hour on Hello Houston. Today also happens to be my mother-in-law's birthday. So happy birthday, Sherry.
Lucky you remembered that.
Yes. My mother-in-law is a wonderful woman. So it's easy to celebrate her.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to know.
Yeah. But what do we have coming up today on Hello Houston, Doug?
Well, coming up on Hello Houston, senior reporter for politics and government at Houston Public Media, Andrew Schneider, will be joining us. He's going to talk to us about a legal battle over hemp products here in Texas. It's headed back to court.
And we do have an update on the Houston City Council vote to amend an immigration policy that would change how police interact with federal immigration authorities during traffic stops. And joining us now is Houston Public Media reporter Dominic Anthony Walsh, who has been at City Hall. Dominic, welcome to Hello Houston.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
So what can you tell us? How did the vote go?
Well, the revision that Mayor John Whitmire's office and Governor Greg Abbott's office agreed on, it did pass in a 13-4 vote. The original ordinance authors, Alejandro Salinas, Abby Kamen, Edward Pollard, voted against the revision, and they were joined by Councilmember Tiffany Thomas. 12 council members, along with Mayor John Whitmire, voted for the revision.
What can you tell us? Do you know, did they say why they voted against the revision?
They think that this is an example of state overreach. All of them have been using the word bullying over the past week to describe the governor's threat. And just to kind of spell it out, the situation, reached this point because Governor Greg Abbott threatened to revoke about $114 million in public safety grants unless the original ordinance was reversed. Now, that original ordinance prohibited police officers from detaining people or prolonging traffic stops due to civil immigration warrants issued by ICE. Mm-hmm. This revision, though, according to the city's legal department, doesn't really change that. The core of the ordinance is still in place. Police officers will still not, be supposed to detaining people or prolonging traffic stops due to these warrants. And so in terms of why they voted against it, despite the city's legal department saying it's not, a substantial change, it really comes down to them believing that this is state overreach and the city should be fighting back rather than working with the governor's office to revise the measure.
So, Dominic, if this actually in practice changes nothing from the old ordinance, do you have any indication why the governor's office went along with this?
So it's not that it changes nothing from the original ordinance. It does change a few definitions into some language. It clarifies that in the regular public reports that are now mandated from HPD, where HPD has to tell the public about its involvement in immigration enforcement, the department needs to withhold confidential information. But like I said, the real core pillar of this original ordinance was this prohibition on officers detaining people because of civil immigration warrants. That is still in place. I've asked the governor's office what they think of this change. They have not responded to a request for comment, but we do know that the city's legal department was working with the governor's office of public safety throughout the revision process.
While monitoring this morning's council meeting, Councilmember Salinas said something I thought very interesting, Dominic, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. She said that the battle isn't within the Houston City Council, but city council members, against the state. Is that the sentiment you got from within the room?
I mean, it was a 13-4 vote. So, there wasn't complete agreement with Councilmember Salinas' perspective. And even in the original ordinance passed a couple weeks ago, it was a 12-5 vote. So there hasn't been complete agreement among the city council members on how they should be, managing the police department's coordination with federal immigration enforcement officials. So Salinas, Pollard, and Kamen definitely do see this as a battle between the state and the city. Mayor John Whitmire, longtime state senator, 50 years in the Texas legislature, he has a relatively warm relationship with the state government, and he was able to work with the governor's office to reach a resolution. So I think there are different perspectives on where this conflict is really centered.
Mm-hmm. So this was an unusually contentious meeting today, was it not? I mean, typically these meetings, they vote on stuff that's on a consent agenda, and maybe one or two items will get discussed. But for the most part, the city council, is, in the past at least, has been almost a Xerox for what the mayor wants. This was unusually fraught, was it not?
In general, more often than not, the city council meetings are relatively calm, but there are moments of disagreement. Things get spicy every so often. This actually wasn't even the closest vote that the mayor has had. Just earlier this year in January, the mayor wanted to use stormwater funding for building demolition, and this was actually relatively controversial. And from my memory, that was the closest vote he has had, was getting the approval of that program. And that was a relatively contentious meeting. Budget season, every May and June, is always a little bit contentious. So it's not like this is a first of its kind, contentious meeting between the mayor and city council members. But yes, to your point, it was longer and more going on than a typical council meeting that lasts an hour or an hour and a half. And, really doesn't have anything contentious on the agenda.
Mm-hmm. You know, Dominic, in the first hour of Hello Houston, I mentioned how Council Member Sally Alcorn is currently the chair of the Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee. She spoke and said how she hated to see this has become a choice between money and people, but she voted for the amendment. And I'm curious what came down for the group who voted in favor of the amendment and what they had to say.
So, I think that there are kind of two groups within the group that voted for the amendment, right? So we had 12 council members and the mayor who voted for the revision. Mm-hmm. Now, if we go back 2 weeks, there were 12 votes for that ordinance, 5 against. All 5 of the people who originally voted against the ordinance 2 weeks ago supported this revision. And I think that from their perspective, City Council shouldn't really be getting involved at this level, telling HPD what to do. And they backed this revision because, there was public safety funding on the line. Now, when it comes to the other 7 council members and the mayor who had supported the original ordinance and then now backed this revision, I think for them, it was about the funding, but also it was about the fact that according to the city's legal department, this change doesn't, affect the core of what that ordinance does. Mm-hmm. It still, according to the city's legal department, protects people's Fourth Amendment rights, the prohibition on unreasonable search and seizure, and then it also protects the financial future. You mentioned Councilmember Sally Alcorn, chair of the Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee. That's exactly what she said. She ultimately supported this ordinance because the city attorney said it protects Fourth Amendment rights and protects the city's financial future.
And, just for clarification, Dominic, we did get a YouTube question from Sean Radigan who says, are they required to hold people or not? And I believe he's referring to HPD.
So when it comes to civil immigration warrants, according to the city's legal department, they are not allowed to hold people solely because of civil immigration warrants. It is worth noting that under current department policy, even with that ordinance that passed 2 weeks ago, the Houston Chronicle first reported, and we subsequently independently obtained and confirmed that there is a document that HPD sent out to officers, telling officers to wait 30 minutes for immigration agents to arrive after the department notifies them about these types of warrants. According to the city's legal department, that will have to change under the ordinance passed 2 weeks ago and revised today. So to answer the question, not only are officers, not required to hold people, they are prohibited from holding people solely due to civil immigration warrants, at least according to the city's legal department.
And I'm also curious, Dominic, are we seeing any reaction from the Houston Police Department? Have we heard from what they're thinking on this?
The union, that is.
Union.
Well, I haven't had time to reach out to Doug Griffith, president of the union, just yet, but definitely interested in hearing his perspective. He was adamantly opposed to the ordinance that was passed 2 weeks ago. I am curious to hear what he thinks about this revision. We'll be reaching out later today.
Do you think the mayor, based on the statements he made during the meeting and perhaps afterward at his customary press conference, is he content that this is now over with, that this is behind him?
Well, this matter is not over because under the new ordinance, HPD has to give regular reports to the city council on its involvement in immigration enforcement. So this conversation will continue. And, I chatted with Councilmember Salinas' office right after the vote, and they said that's what they're going to be watching next. They're going to be looking at those reports very closely to see if HPD's policy in practice aligns with what the city's legal department says it should be.
Houston Public Media reporter Dominic Anthony Walsh. Dominic, thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Houston with this update.
Happy to do it.
Well, it's interesting to hear what's been going on at City Council the past couple of weeks. John Whitmire trying to thread the needle on this whole matter, trying to make everyone happy, especially at a time when so many people are trying to make political points around him. So right. That's interesting.
What I find so interesting is that the city attorney basically said that even with these verbiage changes, it really didn't make any difference in the actual policy itself.
You have to wonder, in the end, was this just a bunch of sound and fury signifying nothing?
Well, unfortunately, if that was the case, it's really put the city in a very difficult position going into such a public and major event like the FIFA World Cup.
Right.
But we're going to continue to monitor this, and with any developing issues, or we'll continue to keep you updated.
You bet. Oh, meanwhile, it turns out that other headlines coming up. A Houston police officer reportedly has been relieved of duty after she posted a video on social media showing herself going on a racist rant. This video shows a woman using racist and obscene language to describe how much she hates black people and how good she felt after yelling a racist slur. KHOU reports that authorities believe the woman is a police officer named Ashley Gonzalez, who has been relieved of duty pending an investigation. The Houston Police Officers Union issued a statement condemning the woman in the video, and the president of the Houston chapter of the NAACP, James Dixon, says he's talked with the police union's president, and they're on the same page. Pretty shocking video, actually, if you watch it.
It's extremely shocking, and we've had Bishop Dixon, James Dixon, on Hello Houston a few times now, and as a leader within our community, I'm proud that we have these voices that can immediately step up and say this is wrong, and we have leadership that is taking action against this.
It's interesting how this came out. Apparently, someone found this video on social media and called it to the attention of the media, and that's how it blew up. So it's rather, and it's interesting. I've actually heard some people at times, whenever police officers in the past have been called out for making statements, public statements of some sort. Well, isn't this a First Amendment issue? Well, the simple fact is, your employer, the First Amendment applies to the government regulating speech. Your employer can fire you for something you say. In general, the First Amendment does not preclude that. So there's not an issue here in this.
And we would love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this firing? Give us a call, 713-440-8870. Again, to me, there's no place for that type of language. There's no place for this type of situation, especially somebody who is there to keep the public safe.
Right, exactly. So.
And also, Texas can now enforce a state law requiring public schools to display posters of the Ten Commandments in classrooms. A federal appeals court ruled on Tuesday. This is something we've talked a lot about right here on Hello Houston. A majority of the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in Texas officials' favor, concluding that the law does not establish an official state religion. It says it does not tell churches or synagogues or mosques what to believe or how to worship or whom to employ as priests, rabbis, or imams. According to the ruling, it punishes no one who rejects the Ten Commandments, no matter the reason. The court heard arguments in January after 16 families sued over the law, alleging that it amounted to state leaders promoting their interpretation of Christianity over other faiths. After Tuesday's decision, the civil rights organizations representing the families expressed disappointment. The court's ruling goes against fundamental First Amendment principles and binding U.S. Supreme Court authority, the group said in a statement. The First Amendment safeguards the separation of church and state and the freedom of families to choose how, when, and if to provide their children with religious instructions. This decision tramples those rights. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton celebrated the decision, calling it a major victory for Texas and its moral values.
See you in the Supreme Court. This one is definitely heading to Washington. It's very much a contrary to the court precedents regarding separation of church and state. But as our colleague Andrew Schneider is going to be joining us in a few minutes, reported in a report that he did just today on Christian nationalism, there are this is a growing trend, and much of this, so much of conservative political ideology that spreads across the nation starts here in Texas. So this could well be something we're going to see spreading across the nation, and it's inevitably going to end up in the U.S. Supreme Court.
We will continue to monitor this case. But again, you can always join the conversation at 713-440-8870. Coming up on Hello Houston, as Doug mentioned, senior reporter for politics and government at Houston Public Media, Andrew Schneider, will discuss a key legal battle over hemp products right here in Texas that is headed back to the court. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Today at 1 o'clock.
Many agents feel that the courts and the media are really the last open avenues for them to convey their sense of what is going wrong within the FBI. So many people said to us, I've never spoken to the media before, but they feel that the internal checks have been shut down or they're not functioning properly.
I'm Rachel Abrams. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
The Daily starts tonight at 7 o'clock.
Support comes from Metro. World Cup planning includes transit improvements intended to serve Houston after the final match. Metro provides bus, rail, and paratransit service and continues mobility enhancements across the region. More at ridemetro.org/Metro Now.
Support comes from Specs Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods, a Texas retailer offering wine, spirits, and finer foods, plus recipes and seasonal features, serving customers for 64 years. Details at specsonline.com.
Support comes from UT Health Houston, Houston's health university, where education, research, and patient care come together to help advance health and improve lives in Houston and beyond. More at houstonshealthuniversity.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Visit Galveston, presenting Art Walk. Various art is featured in downtown galleries and artist studios. Open to the public on the second Saturday of each month. More at visitgalveston.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Celeste Díaz Schurman and guest host Doug Miller.
A key legal battle over hemp products in Texas is heading back to court, where a Travis County judge will soon decide whether to extend a temporary restraining order blocking new state rules. The case comes after lawmakers failed last year to pass an outright ban, shifting the fight to regulatory action. Hemp retailers say the rules go too far, while the state argues there's necessary oversight. To break this all down, we're joined by Andrew Schneider, senior reporter for politics and government at Houston Public Media. Andrew, welcome to Hello Houston.
For having me back.
So let's start simple. What exactly is at stake in this court decision, and what could change overnight depending on how the judge rules?
Well, what's at stake really depends on whom you ask. You know, as you were saying, the people who are in favor of it, starting with the Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick on down to families of people who have had negative effects as a result of exposure to hemp-related products, say that this is a necessary public safety measure. It's necessary particularly to protect children because the products have been marketed to minors in the past. On the other side, you've got people who have come to rely on these products as what they see as a safer alternative for treatment of long-term conditions like chronic pain and PTSD that they otherwise might turn to products that are less safe, like alcohol and opioids. And also, a multi-billion-dollar industry has grown up around these products in the few years that they have been legal. So as far as what happens in terms of what we can look ahead towards the ruling when it comes before the court next week, this is basically a question of whether to extend the current restriction of the law until an actual trial can take place. So currently there's a temporary restraining order in place that's been extended towards the end of next week. The hearing itself has been put on hold by the agreement of all the parties. Could take place as early as the 28th. And at that point, both sides will present evidence as to why or whether or not the court should extend that to an injunction that would last until a final judgment comes through.
So this really does center around a temporary restraining order. And I'm curious in practical terms what that means then for businesses and consumers.
Well, right now, the ban is not in effect. And as long as it's not in effect, products that were legal before these rules came down can be legally marketed, sold, as long as the person that's buying them is over 21. That's according to a set of rules that were handed down by the same agencies in October of last year.
Mm-hmm. So the key players in all of this, who are they? I mean, obviously Dan Patrick he's been speaking out on this issue for a long, long time, correct? Who are the main combatants in the political fight behind this, in addition to the legal fight?
Well, in addition to Lieutenant Governor Patrick, there are a number of key Republican allies in the Senate that have taken this on as an issue. There are also, as I mentioned, family members of people that have had negative reactions, in some cases quite serious, to exposures to products containing THC. That's the main intoxicating component of cannabis. And they are arguing that this is something that is necessary as a public health measure. On the other side, you've got what has, as I said, grown into a multi-billion-dollar industry that employs thousands of Texans who depend on the industry for their livelihood, as well as people, as I said, experiencing chronic pain, post-traumatic stress disorder. There's a fairly strong support for it in certain elements of the veterans community for that reason.
This used to be a third rail issue for Republicans. It used to be the idea of legalizing anything that was even remotely like marijuana. No, off base completely. But that's changed, right? There's now some disagreement among Republicans, right?
Yeah, I think that there's a fairly strong libertarian argument that's grown up around the question of whether this is something that the state should be involved in at all. And certainly since the federal government liberalized the sale of hemp products back in the 2018 Farm Bill, there have been a growing number of Republicans, not just in Texas but in other states, that have seen this as a more nuanced issue.
You know, I am curious for context, Andrew, do you think this really is, lawmakers are looking at this truly as a public safety issue, or is this more of a way to try to regulate an industry that potentially just grew too fast?
I think it probably did take some lawmakers by surprise how quickly it grew. But if they were simply looking to regulate it, this would probably not be the approach they would take, because as people in the industry have argued in trying to in trying to shut down these rules, this is, if the rules are allowed to stand as they are, it's going to put virtually all the businesses that are currently legally involved in the sale of hemp out of business. So this is not simply a question of safety, and they have made the argument that, look, there are certain restrictions they want. They would like to see, the age restrictions being one of them, making sure that certain shops can't set up within a certain distance of schools would be another one. But between the strictness of the rules on the sale of the level of THC in hemp products, as well as the vast increase in the licensing fees that these businesses are required in order to market those few products that would remain legal, a lot of them see this as essentially a death sentence.
So then I'm curious, though, then why lawmakers didn't put an outright ban last session to hemp products.
Well, they tried. This was something that passed during the first session and got to the governor's desk, and the governor vetoed it. And he vetoed it primarily because a similar law had gotten tied up in court. A similar law passed by another state had gotten tied up in court, and he was concerned that this would not withstand a legal challenge. He said, lawmakers, try it again. In the special session, try to tackle this issue and in a way that I can actually pass. What happened was that the special session wound up getting completely taken up with the issue of congressional redistricting, and by the time that fight got decided, there was little appetite for virtually anything else.
So, what should we be watching for out of this hearing? I mean, what could the judge decide? And how quickly could that affect businesses, consumers who are involved in this?
Well, again, this is not a question of ruling immediately whether the rules are going to be allowed to stand or not. The question is whether they will be allowed to take effect before the final trial is set to take place, which could be within several months. So if the injunction goes if the judge issues an injunction, then the stores will be able to continue to operate as they had before, and hemp growers will continue to be able to raise hemp as they had before. If not, then they won't. And a lot of businesses will be forced to shut their doors because they won't be able to continue paying their employees or their rents or their leases until that trial is resolved.
Hemp products have lived kind of in this legally gray zone for quite a while. I mean, as you mentioned, there's THC, there's hemp, there's Delta 8. And I'm curious if this is going to bring more clarity or if this is going to make things even murkier.
I think the goal of both sides is to try and achieve some sort of clarity. I mean, the businesses, a lot of them, the ones that are challenging this, have said, as I mentioned before, we do want regulations. We want some kind of certainty. If there's anything that is commonplace across businesses, whatever the nature of the business is that they prefer certainty to uncertainty. So if they know what the rules are and they see some way to follow it, they'll follow it. If there's some way that they can do so and remain in business legally.
So I've seen polling on this. There's been some polling indicating overwhelming support for legalizing hemp in the state. I just saw polls about 79%. We're talking nearly 80% support keeping hemp-derived products legal. Only 13% are opposed. This according to polls taken last year in last July. Is there political pressure of any kind on the lawmakers who are opposed to hemp?
I mean, there was certainly a much larger number of people that came out to testify against a legal ban than came out to testify in favor of it. So I think that it would be fair to say that, yes.
Yeah. So I keep wondering about the mood over in Austin right now. Like you say, there's a libertarian streak among a lot of these lawmakers, and you got to wonder if any of them are feeling any pressure, any of those opposing it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're now in a campaign season for the next round of the next legislative session, and I have not heard any particularly strong arguments come up in campaigns as far as this being a deciding issue. With however somebody voted, their vote being the determining factor. And yes, I'm going to support you. No, I'm not going to support you. The fact that the legislature is not meeting this year, barring another special session, means that they do get some relief from that pressure.
And we did get a question on YouTube that says, will the federal rescheduling of marijuana affect the Texas laws in any future lawsuits, possibly?
It's possible. I mean, we've got the ruling that came down from Congress last year that effectively accomplished a lot of what Lieutenant Governor Patrick was trying to accomplish at the state level. But there was a there was a time frame that was pushed back for that. That law is not supposed to go into effect until late next year, which gives time for the forces on both sides to sort of marshal their strength for a final argument as to whether to keep that law in place or whether to modify it.
You know, I don't want to catch you flat-footed here, but I'm wondering, do you know of any, as the AMA, or doctors groups, medical associations, taken any position on any of this?
I haven't seen anything along those lines.
That's interesting, because obviously with the medical arguments being made by supporters of hemp, you'd think they would garner some support.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a question of, this is a substance that until recently, as you said, was scheduled. Right. So it's not something that most doctors would weigh in on in terms of, well, is this usable to treat X, Y, or Z? Right. It's just been sort of the way that by word of mouth and by people speaking to other people who have used it, communities have grown up that have turned to it as what they see as a safer alternative to more dangerous drugs.
Right.
Now, Andrew, how does Texas compare to other states in regards to how we handle hemp-derived products?
Well, I have not. I will admit I have not looked as closely at as the way that other states are handling it as Texas has. So I don't.
Right.
Think
we often hear about Colorado leading the way when we look at marijuana usage, medical California, and so I'm always curious about how Texas.
And it's been we've often heard people tout obviously the industry touting the economic benefits of this, talking about what's going on in Colorado and in other states.
Yeah, I mean the one thing that I can say is simply by virtue of the size of the market in this state, Texas is a significant producer and consumer of what was until recently legalized hemp.
I wonder how much passion there is in this. We just got off the line with Dominic down at Dominic Walsh over at the City Hall about the debate over there on ICE and HPD. Very emotional issue. Do you have a sense of how emotional this issue, obviously for the families, people who are using hemp for medical purposes, but is the opposition really solidly against it?
I would say so. I mean, there were a number of stories that came out over the course of the testimony, not nearly as many as the people that were opposed to the legislation trying to ban hemp products. But people were coming out and testifying, saying things like, my brother, I wish he were here today, but he was exposed to THC and he developed a related form of psychosis, and he's no longer here. He's no longer with us. So and so, my son, my daughter is currently in long-term psychological treatment as a result of their exposure to this. As I was saying before, this is something that was until recently a scheduled drug. So maybe the studies are not don't exist to the extent of a what has been a legally prescribed drug up until this point.
Right. Well, as we see what's going on over in Austin in regards to all of this, you've got to wonder what's going to happen in the next session of the Texas legislature.
I don't doubt that if Lieutenant Governor Patrick, being the favorite to be reelected as Lieutenant Governor, if he winds up in charge of the Senate and the Senate stays in charge of the Republicans, this is going to be an issue again next year.
Right.
Andrew Schneider is a senior reporter for politics and government at Houston Public Media. You can find more of Andrew's coverage at houstonpublicmedia.org. Andrew, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
You're welcome.
And coming up, the Don't Mess with Texas campaign. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
You can listen to Marketplace coming up tonight at 6:30.
There is a historically high number of immigrants in detention, and the number of people that have been sitting in ICE detention for over a year has gone up dramatically.
The administration understands that if you are in detention for about 3 months, you start to lose it.
I'm Scott Detrow, NPR's profile of an entire family held in ICE detention for nearly a year. On All Things Considered from NPR News.
It starts today at 3 o'clock.
Hi, I'm Craig Cohen. On the next Houston Matters, an NFL draft preview, Galveston Development, Houston Distilleries, and we chat with members of the Grammy-winning vocal ensemble Chanticleer ahead of a performance with the Houston Symphony. Join us.
Listen tomorrow. It starts at 9 o'clock.
Support comes from Rice University. Founded in 1912, Rice is a private research university with programs in business, the sciences, and more. Students conduct research in fields from health to space exploration. More at rice.edu.
Support comes from Classical Theater Company, presenting Shakespeare's Othello. April 16th through May 2nd, the classic tragedy explores the evils of jealousy, misinformation, and racism. Performance details at classicaltheater.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Celeste Díaz Schurman and guest host Doug Miller.
The official state motto of Texas is one word, friendship. But if you ask a dozen Texans to tell you the state motto, you'd be lucky if any of them know that. And there's a good chance a couple of them will say, "Don't mess with Texas." So how did an advertising slogan for a campaign against littering become, arguably, our state's unofficial state motto? Well, it's a great story, appropriate on this Earth Day, and party politics co-host Brandon Rottinghaus has the not-so-messy details. Here's Texperts.
Welcome to Texperts, Houston Public Media's short primers on Texas government. I'm Brandon Rottinghaus, a political science professor at the University of Houston. During the Cotton Bowl on New Year's Day in 1986, people heard this for the first time.
Each year, we spend over $20 million picking up trash along our Texas highways.
Stevie Ray Vaughan, Don't Mess with Texas. It's iconic now, but started out with a bunch of trash. In the mid-1980s, Texas was drowning in roadside trash. TxDOT was spending about $20 million a year cleaning litter off highways. To cut that cost, TxDOT launched a bold new anti-litter campaign. They hired Austin ad firm GSD&M to come up with a tagline that would resonate. The result was, "Don't mess with Texas," a tough, prideful twist on Don't Litter. The slogan turns 40 this year, and it's still making a difference. TxDOT's goal was laser-focused, to reach the 18 to 35-year-old male drivers who were statistically the worst litterers. In fact, GSD&M co-founder Tim McClure later said the target was basically, quote, bubbas in pickup trucks, unquote, tossing beer cans out their windows. Here's more of the original ad.
Messing with Texas isn't just an insult to the Lone Star State. It's a crime.
Don't mess with Texas.
This opening commercial was a sensation. It framed littering as an affront to every Texan's pride. By putting those words in Stevie Ray's mouth, the ad captured the public's attention immediately. In fact, after the game, viewers were calling TV stations asking for the music video they saw. TxDOT had aimed for just a modest impact, but the results were huge. Within a year, statewide roadside litter count was down by 29%. GSD&M happily lined up more stars. One early spot featured country music icon Willie Nelson crooning a parody of The Yellow Rose of Texas with the words, "Mamas, tell all your babies, don't mess with Texas."
Mamas, tell all your babies, don't mess with Texas. Don't let them throw cans from them old pickup trucks. Don't let them throw bottles and papers and such. Mamas, tell all your babies, don't mess with Texas.
Others included boxing champ George Foreman, country singers like Jerry Jeff Walker, Lyle Lovett, Leanne Rimes, Tejano artists like Little Joe and the Texas Tornadoes, even Dallas Cowboys heroes like Too Tall Jones and Randy White. My favorite as a kid? the Fabulous Thunderbirds.
Down the highway in your fancy car, got that radio blasting, and you're feeling like a star. Zooming down the highway, and you got a heavy load. Don't you trash that Texas highway, don't you throw it in the road, don't you mess with Texas.
The idea was always the same. Texans' own heroes driving home the message that littering is as un-Texan as it gets. TxDOT essentially turned a public nuisance into a statewide marketing effort. But did the campaign work? Yes. Multiple studies and surveys have credited Don't Mess with Texas with a dramatic drop in roadside litter and huge public awareness. By 1990, Texas saw roughly 72% reduction in litters compared to 1986. Within a few years, virtually all Texans knew the slogan. A 1998 study found 96% plus awareness of the phrase. Even outsiders recognized it as a Texas motto. TxDOT estimated that the reduced cleanup efforts had saved the state millions of dollars annually. It also birthed the Adopt a Highway program, allowing Texans to support the cause of keeping Texas beautiful. We talked to the current administrator of the Don't Mess with Texas campaign, Norma Rios of the Texas Department of Transportation.
Norma Rios, welcome to Texperts.
Thank you.
When the Don't Mess with Texas campaign launched in 1986, roadside litter was a massive problem. How measurable was the campaign's early impact, and how do you know it worked?
So that foundational era, when we launched the campaign back in 1986, it did deliver results that established the credibility for this campaign. The state experienced a huge population growth during that time, and as you know, that increases the total number of drivers across the state, which in turn increases the traffic levels, which then is correlated, to a significant and growing roadside litter problem along our highways. And that in itself is what prompted TxDOT to introduce the iconic Don't Mess with Texas campaign. By 1990, the campaign had achieved about 72% reduction in visible roadside litter. By 1998, 76% of those Texans knew that Don't Mess with Texas slogan meant don't litter. And today, now, 95% of all Texans have since been aware of the Don't Mess with Texas slogan.
That's great. And I think that kind of cultural staying power is really important and really impressive because, like I said, the slogan has become a kind of cultural identity marker for a lot of Texans. When I was in college, I had a Don't Mess with Texas bumper sticker in my dorm, and all of my non-Texas friends would ask about it and wonder what it was. And so I'm interested in this concept because I wonder how the kind of symbolic power of the phrasing and the event was balanced with the original purpose of challenging or changing kind of actual litter behavior. That is this something that has grown beyond just this moment of trying to police littering, or is it still connected in most people's minds to making sure that Texans don't litter?
Well, the Don't Mess with Texas slogan has evolved into what we call like a cultural hallmark, so to speak. The phrase itself has appeared organically in speeches, in branding, in merchandise, civic education, in everyday conversations. And so we think it demonstrates the depth of cultural integration that surpassed the reach of conventional advertising, and it reflects a distinctly Texas pride and belonging. But across that, we have seen that it does still focus on the anti-litter campaign because we do more than just the commercials. We have partnerships, we do trash cleanup, so it's exceeded more than what we had initially targeted.
Has the profile of who litters today changed? In the early days, the campaign targeted young male drivers. Is that still the target, or is it broader than that now?
So what we have done across waves of research over the past 40 years was that age has been found to be the biggest predictor of littering behavior. What we consider the most likely litterer age group, it has essentially unchanged over nearly 4 decades. So the youngest age group, typically 16 to 24, maybe up to 32, they have repeatedly shown the highest instance of littering in Texas. So what we know as Gen Z and millennials, they themselves present a unique opportunity to strengthen the campaign's future impact. So it has evolved a bit. And while our research shows that awareness among that group is high, translating that into a consistent behavior offers room for growth for us.
Yeah. The original campaign, kind of on that point, relied heavily on television and radio spots featuring Texas musicians and celebrities trying to hook a kind of younger generation. How has TxDOT adapted the message for social media and today's younger audiences?
Yes, Don't Mess with Texas largely did rely on traditional broadcasts and outdoor media to reach those traveling public. So as media consumption patterns changed through the early 2000s, the campaign's presence on television and radio gradually declined. And then since then, we have updated our research tools to reflect how our audience consumes information today. So the Don't Mess with Texas advertising has shifted targeted strategies from traditional TV and radio to streaming channels and audio, including a variety of digital platforms through social media, and like you, your podcast. So the rise of social networks and streaming platforms, it prompted a pivot towards that digital delivery. And we see it as a more flexible and cost-efficient way to maintain visibility.
And you've got this great range and change of the celebrities involved. So initially it's the fabulous Thunderbirds and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and now you've got Post Malone.
Yes, it's quite an evolution of Faces of Texas.
The last question is, if you were going to relaunch the Don't Mess with Texas campaign today from scratch, what do you think that the agency would do differently? Or maybe kind of put differently, is there a need for a new, bold, identity-driven campaign these days?
Well, the Don't Mess with campaign has done is focus on reinforcing the norm that Texans dispose of litter properly. And what our research has shown is that why individuals make a decision and that relationship between their surroundings can recognize that littering behavior is habitual. So I don't think that the campaign needs to make a bold change, but what we need to do is kind of talk to folks how they, receive information. So we need to see why individuals act the way they do. In other words, they require the least amount of effort, the most immediate payoff, and to make it a routine decision in their environment to throw away trash. So as Texas continues to grow and diversify, our research and strategy will ensure that the campaign remains both effective and environmentally impactful, as well as culturally resonant for the generations to come.
Norma Rios, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Texperts, and thanks to everybody, cast and crew here at Houston Public Media for making it happen.
That was Brandon Rottinghaus, University of Houston political science professor and co-host of Houston Public Media's Party Politics. He spoke with Norma Rios, the current administrator of TxDOT's Don't Mess with Texas campaign. All episodes of Texperts are available to listen to on our website. Just go to houstonpublicmedia.org and search Texperts.
Don't Mess with Texas. What a successful slogan. I had a conversation once with Tim McClure, who was the man who came up with that slogan. And he was a very creative guy, the head of GSD&M, a big advertising agency over in Austin. Yeah. And they were brought in to come up with some sort of a campaign, an anti-littering campaign. But he knew that Texans and people in general don't like to be lectured. They don't like to be hectored into doing something. But he also understood that Texans are really proud of the state. And he said he was walking his dog one day and thought about picking up the mess that his dog was leaving. And he thought of his mom saying, pick up the mess. And he thought, don't mess with Texas.
Well, that's fascinating.
And Bob Lanier at the time, future Houston mayor, at the time he was the head of the Department of Transportation, the chairman, I believe, of the board. And he actually said that there were some people within TxDOT who didn't like the slogan at first. They said, we shouldn't do that. That sounds too hostile. And he overruled them. Lanier did. He's very proud. He was very proud. Lanier was. He was a man of numbers, always clicking through his head. And he said that the campaign literally paid for itself. They were able to cut back on the number of cleanup crews on the roads because so many people took the message to heart.
And, I think that, the message itself was so just on point. And then even the logo, everything that went with it, all of the names associated with it, you can close your eyes and you can be on pretty much any road trip and see the Don't Mess with Texas sign. And there is a certain amount of pride about that
Sure.
slogan.
Sure. All of those commercials they produced back in the 1980s. I remember Tim McClure gave me a CD with all of those commercials on it. I cherished it for a while. That was like having a collection of hit music videos from the 1980s and 1990s.
I love that. And Doug, Noah Espinosa says, Doug is so cool.
Oh, well, she's cool, too. Noah, I beg your pardon. He's cool.
Noah
I thought you said Nora. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our show. We have run out of time. We want to thank you for watching and listening to Hello Houston. We'll be back tomorrow with more conversations. We're also going to share our current obsessions, so have yours ready. You can send us them at talk@hellohouston.org. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. This is News 88.7. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
This week in This American Life, James Brawley was on vacation with his girlfriend, swimming one night. She went to bed, leaving him and a beautiful